Help! I'm in a battle of wills with God. You know, it's not unusual to be in a battle of the wills. You could be in a battle of wills with your children, maybe at times with your spouse, maybe sometimes with your boss. But it's also not uncommon to find yourself in a battle of wills with God. But the difference is, whenever you're in a battle of the wills with God, it's very important that you let Him win that battle. You know, you want to go through life saying, "Not my will, but your will be done, God." And what a significant and meaningful shift in life and with your day or with your heart when you begin to let God win in the battle of the wills. That you determine that not my will, but His will be done. In that place of your heart, in that place of your life, when you're in that space, there is great joy, there is great abundance, when His will is being done instead of your own, when the battle of the wills is being won by God. So today I want to share with you a couple of ways to help you let God win the battle of the wills, a few ways so that you're saying with your life, "Not my will be done, God, but your will be done." First, to let God win in the battle of the wills, realize that in every circumstance, over every issue, His ways are always better than any of the ways you might come up with when they're in conflict with Him. You know, we think of the Bible as the manual of life. Well, the manual of life was written by the Creator. So He certainly knows how to write a manual about life. He certainly knows what are the best things for you to be doing and what are the things to not be doing. So the best thing to do is to realize that He always knows better and let Him win in the battle of the wills. There's a story of a guy one time, he ordered a tree house online and it came with instructions. Do you hate when there's all these instructions? You have a hard time getting them followed and all? Well, in this time, it was particularly bad because the tree house that he had ordered for his kids came with the wrong instructions. They actually came with instructions for a sailboat. So now the guy is really frustrated, a little angry. So he writes an email to the company and he says, "You sent me instructions for a sailboat." And the company just replied back and said, "We are so sorry. We will send you the right instructions. But in the meantime, maybe you could get a little chuckle out of thinking about the fact that there's probably someone out there right now who also got the wrong instructions and is trying to sail a treehouse." I don't know if the guy got any chuckle out of that at all. But you know what? When we try to do things our own way, when we battle against God's way, it's like trying to sail a treehouse. It's not the way the instructions are meant to be. It's not what's going to work. It's not what's going to be best. When God says, "Let me win the battle of the wills," He is saying, follow the instructions that are really do apply to life. Follow the manual that really works, the manual He wrote, rather than whatever it is we might be trying to do on our own, separate from the true instructions of life, those things that would really make our life better. So the scriptures say this in Romans chapter 16. "To the only wise God, through Jesus Christ, be the glory forever." God is the only wise one, so that when we are in life and we're disagreeing or we're in a battle, we need to sit back and remind ourselves of that there is one wise God, and then there is all of us. And so when we come against the one wise God, we need to say, wait a minute, there's wisdom and then there's not wisdom. There's wisdom and there's foolishness. There's his way and then what is often our way. And say, well, his way is the manual of life. It's what really works because he's the only wise God. And then the scriptures say this in Psalm 119, your hands made me and fashioned me. And so we need to sit back and be reminded not only that there's only one wise God, but that this one wise God is the one who made me, is the one who fashioned me, and is the one who's made all of life. So he certainly knows what's best. Your hands made me and fashioned me. And then it's important to remember that the instruction manual of life is not like one of those manuals that's so impossible and hard to follow and understand. In fact, most of the things in the scripture are fairly straightforward and simple for us to understand. The manual of life from God isn't really that complicated. I like the quote of the American author Mark Twain when he said, it's not the stuff in the Bible that I can't understand that bothers me. It's the stuff I can understand. Most of it is rivetingly clear what we actually need to do. It reminds me of this one time when I took one of my kids to McDonald's and got one of those Happy Meals, and it had a toy with it. And the toy was very simple, but it came with an instruction manual. And it was just a little toy and it had a button in the back, and you push the button and then the arms of the character goes like this. So the instructions said this. Step 1, press the button. Step 2, watch the hands move. And it had some arrows to show you. In a lot of ways, the things of the Bible are as simple as that. The instructions are clear. The ways of God are fairly obvious in many or most cases of life. So follow the manual. Follow the wise God. Follow the one who fashioned and formed you and knows exactly what's really best for you. When you find yourself fighting against God in the battle of the wills, realize there's one wise God, one who's written the manual, one who really knows what is best. Let him win the battle. Secondly, to let God win the battle of the wills, realize that any time that you have insisted on your way against his way, it's never gone well, that it's only resulted in harm and trouble for you. You know, they say that hindsight is 20/20. So look back on your life. When you've done things that weren't pleasing to God, weren't what he would do, weren't what would be following the manual of life, how did it go? Was it something that produced some great result in your life for you or for others? Or was it something that was actually very harmful? I think you'll see that it was actually something very harmful for you. And that's true of every time that we win the battle of the wills against God. So there's this account one day of this guy who was flying on a plane, and the person who was seated next to him wasn't a believer. So the man who was a believer decided he would share his faith with the guy next to him. After sharing his faith, the guy said to him, well, I don't want to follow the Lord because there's stuff that I just don't want to give up. And so the Christian took out a 3x5 index card, and he wrote on one side of the card, heaven. And then on the other side of the card, he asked the guy, what are some of the things that you don't want to give up? And the guy said, well, women, partying, pornography, alcohol. And then he showed him the sides of the card. On one side, heaven, one side, all those things. And he said, now realistically, are these things worth holding on to give up heaven? And it was a way that was presented to the guy so that he could see, what am I doing? Why would I give up heaven for these things? And he actually ended up making the decision for Christ, accepting the Lord into his life, realizing the trade-off, it wasn't worth it. None of the stuff he was holding on to was worth anything. Now, that same sort of thing can go on in the life of the believer, where we could make a list and we could share what we would gain if we followed God's way and what we would have to give up. And we would realize the same thing. The only thing we would be giving up is worthless stuff, stuff that really actually harms us, and what we would be gaining is things that would actually be better for our life in the long run, every time. So the scriptures say this. In Psalm 119, verse 2, we read, "How blessed are those who observe his testimonies, who seek him with all their heart." If we observe his testimonies, if we let him win the battle of the wills, oh, how blessed that really is going to be for our life. Whatever we give up is something that only would have hurt us or wouldn't have been worth it anyway. And then we read in Jeremiah 44:7, the scriptures say, "Now then, thus says the Lord God of hosts, why are you doing great harm to yourselves?" If we're honest, when we win the battle of the wills, all that's happening is we're doing great harm to ourselves. So thirdly, to let God win the battle of the wills is to realize that we have been made to let our will bend and yield to God, the Creator. It is not meant to be the other way around. It's not meant that we're supposed to be twisting God's arm or bending his will to suit us. We have been made to bend our will for what the Creator wants. I had a seminary professor one time say, there's really two things in life to remember, and if you remember these two well, you're going to do great. One is, there is a God, and two, you're not him. And if you remember that in the battle of the wills, that would go well for you as well. That there is a God, you're not him. You're meant to yield to him, to God. You're not God, but he is. And so you bend your will to him as a way of life. That's when life goes well. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's how we have been designed. That we say, your will be done, not mine. There's a story of a large naval ship that was at sea one time, and in the distance, the captain of the ship could see a light blinking that his ship was heading straight for. So he called out to the other ship by radio, and he said, "I am the captain. Please adjust your course 10 degrees to the north." Well, he got a reply, and it said, "I'm a third-class seaman. I suggest you adjust your ship 10 degrees to the north." Well, the captain of the ship was furious, and he said, "I am a captain, and I am the captain of this battleship. You move your ship 10 degrees to the north." And the reply came, "Well, I'm a lighthouse. I suggest you go ahead and move your ship." Truth is, we should not be moving God's will or attempting to, but instead, in the same way as the lighthouse isn't going to move for the ship, we ought to be saying the Creator God ought to be moved, we ought to move instead of the Creator God, right? And so the scriptures say this in the Lord's Prayer itself, Matthew 6, "Our Father who is in heaven, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven." It's God's will that should stand. It's God's will that should be unmoved. It is our will that should be moved. That's the way life is meant to be. You remember Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane praying just before the crucifixion. He said these words to the Father, "Not my will be done, but yours be done." That is what we're designed to say all of our lives. Not my will, but yours be done. Take those same words that Jesus shared, make them a way of life. Not my will be done, but yours. What a powerful shift that would make for every aspect of life, for the entire outcome of every day of your life. Not my will be done, but yours. When all is said and done, let God win the battle of the wills. When you find yourself struggling with God, you find yourself battling, wanting to twist his arm and shape what he wants, reverse it. Shape what you're desiring. Shape what you want. Let God win the battle of the wills. Say over and over as a way of life, not my will be done, but yours. Thank you so much for being with us today for this midweek devotional. And I want to encourage you to look at all of the top 50 questions that we're studying that are posted every Sunday, and then at all the devotions that will be posted every Wednesday. Subscribe, hit the like button, and be a big part with us every day and every week. So glad to have you with us. And remember, for every question, there's always an answer.